I am so excited to introduce this survivor today, Mr. Christophe Lafontant. Thank goodness I have a little bit of a Louisiana Cajun French accent, so I'm able to say that. He's fancy. But I'm super excited to welcome him to the show today. And one of the things that I always do as a podcast host, as an author, and just a person in life whose whole purpose and platform is to highlight people that are doing great things, highlight people that are surviving life in whatever way it is. So Christophe is here today. He's going to tell us all about his journey, what he's doing, his battles, challenges. He's also an author. He's working on a movie. So he has tons of great things that he's going to tell us about today. So welcome, Christophe.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. Any chance that I get to share my story, it means so much to me. So thank you for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. So first, let me just give you guys a little idea about who Christophe is. Okay. I went to his website. He actually is known on Instagram and basically anywhere. 1man3hearts.
Yes.
So if you just start typing that in, he comes up. So basically the story with Christophe is that when he was a child, he was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, and he had a heart transplant, and he'll tell you all of his story, but just to give you guys a summary. And so then whenever he became an adult, he started having issues, and he was diagnosed with a genetic disorder. And so what happened with this genetic disorder is that it has caused all of these chronic conditions that he has been dealing with and that he's still dealing with now. And he's going to tell us all about that and how he's surviving and some of the challenges that he has. So first, before we go into the story, Christophe, I wanted to kind of just give people an idea of what cardiomyopathy is. And cardiomyopathy is basically whenever your heart muscles are thickened and it causes your heart to not be able to pump like a normal heart. So usually in your body, you want muscles. You want you want muscles to come and be buffed or whatever else. But when you're talking about inside, the last thing that you want is going to be any type of thickening of walls or lining and things like that. So what happens with cardiomyopathy is it actually stops your heart from being able to pump as efficiently as a normal heart. So he had that as a child, and then the transplant and things like that. So cardiomyopathy is actually very, very common. A lot of times with cardiomyopathy, it goes undiagnosed. Some people may not even have symptoms of it. So I know that you have a whole story to tell us. So now that I've basically given your whole life story to everyone, I'll go back and let you tell your story because I'm sure you tell it so much better than me.
You did a great job.
Tell us about how your childhood, how it was diagnosed, and then, like I said, the genetic and all of that, and educate us because other people may have issues and they don't even know about it as well. So fill us in.
So I was born normal. Normal, typical. I was meeting all of my milestones, and there were no apparent or evident issues at that time. So the first 6 years of my life, I was very active. I was actually walking at 10 months. I was speaking and singing happy birthday on my first birthday. So there were no issues that anyone could tell, at such an early age. When I was 6 years old, after a karate class, I came home one night and I ended up collapsing at home. My mom, who's a physician, she was the one that really kind of took over at the time and did everything to make sure that I survived through that night, eventually bringing me to the hospital where doctors realized that I was in complete heart failure. And when they sat my parents down and explained this to them, it was a complete shock. Because as I said, for the first 6 years of my life, I was flourishing, I was developing at a normal rate, and there were no apparent issues. But with the with my heart being in complete heart failure at that time, doctors still did not know what exactly was the cause. They attributed it to a possible viral infection, but they really did not know exactly what took place. I had an emergency pacemaker implanted at the age of 6, and for the first 10 years with that pacemaker, I did not have any complications. I had a relatively normal childhood. I would go in for regular checkups just to kind of check in and make sure that everything was good with the heart and the pacemaker. But when I was going into puberty in my teens, my heart was no longer able to keep up with the rapid changes of my body. And it was at that time that I underwent an evaluation for a heart transplant. I had my first heart transplant at the age of 16, and as you can imagine, as a teen going through something like that, it was quite traumatic, especially because transplant itself was not something I was very familiar with, let alone a heart. So I remember looking at the doctors and my parents like, what are you talking about? They're going to replace my heart. It sounded like something out of a horror movie. Eventually, they put me on the list and we prepared to have an extended stay. Are you still there? Okay. Uh, um, so we were prepared to have an extended stay in the hospital for the wait for my organ. And miraculously, I received my first heart transplant in just 5 days. And so that was completely unexpected and really unheard of. To wait for a heart usually takes anywhere from 6 months to a year typically, and so to receive a heart in just 5 days was quite a miracle for me. My first heart lasted me for 4 years until unfortunately ended up rejecting, and that was when I needed a second heart transplant. For the second heart transplant, I wasn't as lucky, and this time the wait was much longer, and I ended up spending 7 months in the intensive care unit until I received my heart. And at that time, I came very, very close to not making it, to the point that I was actually, the doctors wanted to list me for what is considered an alternate um, donor list to place me on the list for a heart, which is usually of people that are older in age or typically considered a second rate heart. During that time, waiting for my second heart transplant, my kidneys ended up failing. And so I was placed on dialysis for 2.5 years after receiving my heart until I eventually received my kidney transplant in 2006. At that time, after all of those different surgeries and complications with the heart, I thought I was in the clear because I figured I just had this isolated heart issue, and now with a new heart for the second time, I'm thinking, okay, I can now,
You
yes,
finally
I
done,
paid my
right?
dues.
Get a
I
break,
can
exactly.
now go on and live my life because all my life I had been dealing with illness and I had sort of adapted to not feeling well. And so now when I had received my new organ, it was like this new lease on life. I was feeling energetic and lively and healthy. It really just was a completely different experience for me, feeling so good because I had been so used to dealing with, nausea and abdominal pain and all kinds of different symptoms that came with my condition. So I went through the next few years, living my life. I had a good job. I going to Columbia University. I had all these wonderful things going for me. And in my late 20s, I started to experience weakness in my legs, which at first I thought it was no big deal. I thought maybe I just was not exercising enough. I thought maybe I needed to add some more supplements to my diet. I mentioned it to my mom, who, as a physician, was a little concerned, and so she made an appointment for me to see one of her colleagues. And long story short, after a series of testing, eventually it was, told to us that I was diagnosed with this rare genetic condition called myofibrillar myopathy. What does this mean? We had no idea. We had never heard of anything like this. Turns out it's a progressive genetic disorder that gradually breaks down the muscle fibers in my body over time. We now realized that this was responsible for my original cardiomyopathy when I was 6 years old. Because the heart is a muscle, and that was the first muscle that was affected as a result of my condition. And sometimes, in certain cases, because everybody's different, this certain condition can present itself in the reverse. People will have muscle weakness in their limbs and, their arms, their legs early, and then the hard stuff comes after. But for me, it started with the heart weakness, and then everything else presented itself later. So at the same time that my legs were now getting weak, my diaphragm muscle, which is the muscle that supports our lung function, was starting to become affected as well. I ended up going into respiratory failure when I was 26 years old. The night before my 27th birthday, I ended up being hospitalized, and a few weeks later, I ended up being treated. And right around that same time was when we received the diagnosis of my disease. Since that time, in the last 12 years, I have lost my ability to walk. I can no longer walk and stand. I am now fully wheelchair bound. I have grown completely dependent on the ventilator, which is now essentially my life support to support my breathing. I also have lost a lot of my ability to do anything for myself, grooming and feeding myself and just overall taking care of myself every single day. And so I do have a 24/7 live-in caregiver. His name is Emmanuel. He's an absolute godsend. And he has come into my life and he does everything for me. But most importantly, he makes me feel safe. And, I don't even really think about my disability when I'm with him because he just, it's like second nature. He picks up on my cues. I don't even have to, before I even have to mention that I need something, he's already doing it. And so I'm very fortunate in that sense. And, yeah, my life has definitely not been easy, but I'm here and I am doing everything I can to still make the best of being here. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful and I'm happy.
Well, first, thank you so much for telling us your story, Christophe, because
Yes.
that is a lot. just just listening to it. And one, I'm a nurse, so I sometimes I'm so used to seeing sick people, not necessarily right now where I am in my career. I'm kind of not in that domain anymore, but you get so used to it, and it's kind of like you're so used to telling your story. You're so used to, like you said, you went through a period where you were sick for so long, it just became your norm. So thank you so much for breaking it down and telling that to us, because it's a lot, and that's a lot for one person to go through. So, I just want to just say again, thank you for opening up and telling us that. We're very, very sympathetic to all of that that's going on, because I can imagine mental health wise is also, an adaptation as well, trying to make sure, like you said, you feel happy and blessed or whatever. But I'm just saying, on a daily basis too, I know it's hard to also stay in those good spirits, because I know you got to have some days where you like, this don't make no
Yes.
sense, I'm so sick of this. So again, thank you for telling us your story. So now let me ask you this. What about your challenges that you have felt? So I know going forward, you from the time that you had the transplant, and you said you were able to kind of have a little bit of a normal life for a certain time, but what did you feel going through this whole process has been the biggest challenge? Not just the survivorship, but just the other things. I mean, lack of independence, whatever it is that you think. Like when you identify, like, yeah, being sick sucks, but this is what I found the biggest challenge to be through
I
my
definitely
story.
think the loss of my independence. I think that was the hardest thing to accept just because you feel so helpless. And that comes with a great deal of anxiety and not being able to do for yourself. Just little things like, being in bed and if I need to use the bathroom. Whereas most people, they throw off their blanket, they hop out of bed and go to the bathroom. For me, it's an entire process of I have to call my caregiver. He has to come in. He then has to transfer me to the wheelchair. He has to now try and get my clothing off and then transfer me to the toilet. Then has to wipe me and clean me. It's a whole thing. And so, as you mentioned, my day in and day out is constant, and it's always trying to overcome challenges. I'm constantly trying to talk myself out of anxious thoughts. It really, really is difficult because, you know, I try my very best not to let my mind run away with me, but when I think about all the things that I'm no longer able to do on my own, or, even in a situation like, let's say, there was a fire, and I think about the fact that I can't just get up and run out of the building. I have a whole, not only am I physically limited in terms of being able to move, but my breathing, I have a whole, yes, you
All
know,
equipment.
um,
Yeah, you're
uh, thinking about if the electricity goes out and what do I do then? Fortunately, my building is equipped with a generator, but God forbid I'm in a location where there is no generator or there's no power. So these are things that are always constantly running through the back of my mind. And, so for me, that has been the biggest challenge. It's not even so much the physical aspect, it's the mental that I've found, because if you can get a hold of your mind and your thoughts, then everything else kind of just falls into place because essentially it all starts with our mind.
right. And you know what? That's a very good perspective. And that's why I asked the question because, again, with us on the outside looking in, it's just like, oh, okay, well, all right. So then, yeah, his biggest challenge is probably waking up in pain every day, or his biggest challenge is whatever. But, right. I mean, you identified some key things there that a lot of people take for granted, and also for people that maybe have someone that have a disability or have something going on with them. I think it's important for you that you just raised awareness that, hey, you need to check on
Yes.
those people, because just because they're rolling around in their wheelchair, there's a whole other part that you may not be aware of, that fear, the acceptance of losing that independence. I mean, I can't imagine. I had cancer, and I had a little period of time where I tell my story that I was the weakest I've ever been in my life. And it's very humbling whenever you go from, working out and doing stuff, and you can't even bend over to shave your legs or put your hair in a ponytail. Like those little things,
Yes.
like you get humbled real quick. Like, oh my gosh, like I really have to have someone come help me. So, I just can't imagine every day, how it is living like that. So again, thank you for sharing that side. So I know that you have, in this time period of dealing with this, you've
Yes.
done lots of stuff. So I know that you wrote a book, and your book is called 1Man, 3 Hearts, 9 Lives. So, one, can you tell us what the book is about, and also what made you
My book
decide
is
to write a
about
book?
essentially my life story. It starts on the night of February 23rd, 1990. That was the night that I fell sick at home. And I really go through all the stages of my life, and not just from a medical perspective, but just from a personal perspective as well. Because, yes, I was going through all these medical challenges, but I was also going through life as an adolescent, as a teenager, and I had very, very real issues aside from my medical things. You know, there was things going on in my family. I struggled with my sexuality for a very, very long time. You know, my identity crisis as a young black man growing up in a town that was only white people. You know, there was only one other black family in town. Everybody thought we were cousins, so I had my issues with that. And so I really talk about all of those different things and how I was able to overcome. And essentially, that is the premise of my story: is survival and perseverance and overcoming. And I will say that after going through so much hardship and so many obstacles and managing to come out on top, I knew in my heart that there was other people out there that had to be going through the same type of thing and could relate on some level. And I just wanted to share my story in an attempt to help those other people not feel so alone and give them that motivation, that inspiration to let them know that, hey, you can get through this. You can. You have it inside of you. And if you fight and you believe in yourself and you push yourself, you can overcome anything. And so when I was writing my story, I told myself, I am going to be as transparent and vulnerable as possible because I knew that that was the key to connecting with my audience. And I said, if I'm going to do this, it's all or nothing. So I poured my heart and soul out onto those pages, and it has been 6 years. I self published, so I did everything myself from the cover design to choosing the font. The only thing that I did outsource was my editors for, just tone and making sure the story flowed, grammar, all that type of things. But everything else I really did myself. And it was a labor of love, but, also just a story of encouragement. And the response so far has really been that it's validated me and let me know that I have a purpose and a calling, and I'm just again so grateful for any opportunity to be able to continue to share.
Well, I just wanted to just kind of sidebar before we go into another one of your projects that I just I'm just so touched and honored for this episode because it just motivates me and it makes me really think about it, and I hope that anyone that's listening is also thinking the same thing. But the fact that you're saying that this is what you're going through every day in life, these are the things that you're dealing with, this chronic condition, not being able to walk, needing dialysis, needing this, like all of these things that you've gone through, and yet your whole reason and rationale behind writing a book is you want your
Yes.
story to inspire other people. So like that is like, oh my God, like it's like but I just that just says so much for your character because obviously you can be like, yeah, well, I want to be famous or I want this, but no, your whole thing is that you want people to read your story, hear about what you went through, and hopefully that allows them to retain some of that strength that you're passing through these words or your story, your movie, whatever. Like you're hoping to transfer some of that energy and motivation to them. So I love
Thank
that. I
you.
love
Thank
you.
you.
That's a
I love you
great.
too.
I'm glad that you said that. And people, yeah, people don't understand that. Like people, like they listen to your story and blah blah blah. But I think that it takes someone like I said, I want my platform to be where I'm like, hey, you know why this is a big deal, right? Hey, you know why this guy is doing this, like you know Why are we talking about him? Because this is what he's saying, that in all the crap that he's had in life, he still wants to help other people and motivate someone that's going through something. So big
Yes.
kudos to you. Virtual hugs, like we say in okay. And don't worry, guys. He will tell us at the end how to get his book, all of that great stuff. But next project, I know that you are working on an actual movie. So you have elevated from just words on paper to actual visual, which is very awesome. Also, so one, how did you decide to do, I guess, like a movie, or what was that whole thought process behind it? And tell us about what it's like working
So
on that right
after
now.
I had written the book, and some time had passed, I was really trying to think of different ways that I could take things to the next level. And I'm just very conscious of the fact that not everybody's a reader. Not everybody really has the attention span to read. And so I thought that a visual representation might appeal to a different crowd, a different audience. So, about a year and a half ago, a good family friend of ours put us in touch with a production company called Sugar Beach Digital. They are an incredibly talented team, and together we have put together a documentary short, which is a 23-minute documentary short covering my story. Essentially, the short we are using as promo to try and get ourselves to be able to build and produce a full length documentary feature. That is the ultimate goal right now. But we had figured that creating the short would be able to show people what exactly we were hoping to create on a larger scale, and then people would potentially donate, invest. So far, we've entered a number of film festivals across the country. We have been accepted by 6. We were nominated for Best Documentary Short in 1. So, again, that's kind of like validation of my purpose and knowing that, I do, in fact, have a story to tell. Because it might sound crazy, but there were so many times prior to writing the book that I was doubting, like, I'm like, who would even be interested in my story? People get sick all the time. What's so special about me? And it took a long time for me to kind of wrap my head around the fact that I could have this level of an impact, that I could be someone that could ultimately make a change in the world. And, it took a long time, as I said, for me to grasp that concept. And now that I have, I feel like it's a runaway train. There is no stopping me, and I am gonna do everything I can to complete this project. As you said, it's a mission of mine and a dream, and I'm working with an incredible team. We are very, very unified, and we motivate each other, and they believe in me and they believe in my story, which I think is like very, very important. And so, right now, we have been working very hard to get back to filming. We would like to interview family members, doctors, all of whom I still stay in touch with. The doctor that diagnosed me and the doctors that took care of me when I was 6, nurses that have become really good friends throughout my journey. So there's so much more to my story to tell. And we're just really hoping to be able to accomplish that, to not only raise awareness for things like rare diseases, organ donation, but also for things like mental health. I really believe that mental health right now is more fragile than ever. And I think some people, they may not be dealing with physical ailments that you can see. Like me, you look at me and you're like, oh wow, he's going through some stuff. But that's not to say that the person that looks like they have it all together, that is out there smiling, posting themselves in Tahiti or wherever it is, that they don't have their own stuff going on. Every single one of us, everybody, I have not met a person to date that has told me, oh, my life has been easy. It's been without any issues whatsoever. That's not the case. We all have our things. So, my story, I'm hoping to reach not just people with medical issues or chronic illness, but just people in general because life is hard for all of us. And I only hope to show you that, yes, it's hard, but we can get through it and we can still find the beauty in it.
Oh my goodness, Christoph. Okay, I'm coming to visit you. You're my support. I
I
don't need a
love
dog
that.
anymore.
I
I'm just
love
gonna
that.
have a support. You're gonna be my support person going. But no, that is so true. And actually, on my show, I've had a few mental health episodes about that as well. And we kind of talk about that because there is this new awareness for that. And you made an excellent point that just because people see you and they are able to identify, like,
Yes.
he must be going through some stuff because he got tubes and hair. Right, but what about the people who don't have those physical ailments, and they might be, I mean, you're in a better mental space than a lot of people who are out here functioning and going through life in daily day-to-day activities, and they're miserable, contemplating suicide, doing, all of this, whatever, taking out on someone else, living with PTSD, and they're suppressing those feelings. So the fact that you are talking, and I tell people all the time that writing a book is also a form of therapy, because whenever you start really writing those details, and I know you've told your story numerous times, but when you're actually writing down, like you said, from childhood and going over those things and saying how things made you feel and talking about those traumas, a lot of times that is actually a healing process, because you may have sort of swept it under the rug, and then now that you're retelling it, you're like, that was kind of crappy. I didn't really like going through that, or they did me wrong back then. So so it's a whole healing process. So anyway, great. I love hearing about it. So book, movie, anything else that
Oh,
you're
listen, I
working on
make
other than
time.
that? I mean, do you have
You know,
time for anything
it's funny.
else?
One of the things with me, with everything that I have going on, I find that staying busy, staying creative, having projects, having a goal, all of those things really help me mentally. Because when I don't have things going on and I'm just left alone with my own thoughts, that is probably the scariest time. Because, your mind is going to find something to think about. And I would much rather it be like a deadline or a project than, all of my limitations, and start focusing on all the things that I can't do. Like, I'm telling you, I'll be up at night thinking about the fact that I can't skydive when I'm afraid of heights. So I'm like, if I could walk, I wouldn't skydive anyway. So why am I so focused on this right now? But that's just how the mind works. It's not rational and you can't make sense of it. But to answer your question, I actually just became certified as a health and life coach. So I am now going to be taking on clients as of the fall, just to really help people on a one-on-one level, because I've been able to help a lot of people through my social media, but I think some people really kind of need that personal one-to-one connection. And so I will now be offering that service to just help people get through the tough times in life. Coping skills with stress management, anxiety, all of those types of things. So that's just another avenue and a different audience that I hope to be able to reach and affect.
Well, that's so awesome. Yeah. And then also and having that
Yes.
certification also
Yes.
validates that, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing. And then also it gives you an opportunity, because I'm a certified life coach also, but it helps you learn different ways to cope, where I maybe before that I would give you
Yes.
some life advice and maybe it wasn't the right
Yes.
advice. And now I've learned how to kind of say things differently. Like,
Yes, yes.
maybe not everybody's as tough as
You're
me. Let me,
exactly right. Exactly right. Because I
you know.
felt like, before
So
that,
I
you're right. I would give advice and stuff, but I definitely learned so many tools and techniques to kind of moderate the way in which I help people. So I totally feel you on that. I completely agree. Yes. No, yes, yes.
Exactly. Some people that they not all tough like us. Little, they're delicate flowers.
Yes.
We got to treat them like little fine china. Okay, so great. I love to hear. I love all of that. Okay, so now tell us how we can support your cause, how we can get access to your book, if you have any information about the movie or whatever, because people might be looking for that as well, or how they can support. So just basically tell us your social media handles, how we can support you in whatever way, and how we can get access to any of your
So all of my social
paraphernalia
media,
or
you can find
whatever
me.
so that
I've
we can
made it very
support you.
easy. 1man3hearts. So it's the number 1 man, the number 3 hearts. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I'm on Twitter, so you can find me on all social media platforms. Right now, my biggest mission, as I said, is to complete my full length documentary film. So, any contributions that people can make, I am very aware that we are in a tough financial time right now. So, if people are not able to financially contribute, then just sharing my story is really, really more than enough. And I'm so grateful for that, which is why I'm so grateful to you today to give me this opportunity. The film, all the information, the GoFundMe link, the trailer, everything is on our website, theheartfilm.com. We also have an Instagram where we have a lot of behind the scenes footage and a Facebook page. That's The Heart Film. And the other way you can find my book is on Amazon, 1man3hearts, 9 Lives. I do offer autographed copies on my website, 1man3hearts.com. On my website, you can also find my merch. I'm wearing my hoodie right now. I don't know if you could see. I have hoodies, t-shirts, hats, beanies, all kinds of cool stuff on there. That's on my website as well, 1man3hearts.com. And all of those contributions really, really help me out with medical bills and just kind of sustaining my living because, to put it bluntly, it costs a lot to maintain my care and, just my level of health. So I really, really appreciate anybody that supports me in any kind of way by, like I said, it doesn't even have to be monetary, just by sharing my story and even just being affected by my story is enough for me. So thank you.
Right. No, and that's exactly what I was saying. Like, even just the motivation, just from coming from this episode, like, just the simple things like this, like, people don't realize, the impact that they have on the world. So, there could be someone that's having a rough day that just happens to listen to this show while they're doing their cardio, or maybe they're commuting home, and it forces them to
Yeah.
rethink, like, should I really be complaining about what I'm complaining about today? So thank you for getting them
You
straight,
do.
Christoph, because we have so much to be
Mhm.
grateful for. But yeah, but we tend to complain. So again, so you guys make sure he said it. I'll also have all of his links and everything in the notes, as well as if you guys are looking at this video on any of the social media platforms, I'll have everything in there, and I'll have him tagged and a lot of stuff too. So make sure you're going to the website, make sure you're going follow him. He's every day he has something on his Instagram that's something great or something to inspire you. So I love that. I love that even in all that you're going through, Christoph, I'm just so just I don't know, touched, proud. I don't know what the exact adjective is that I can say, but I just feel so just motivated and just proud to have come across you and giving you this platform
No, thank
to tell
you.
your
Thank you.
story and all of that great stuff. So thanks for being a part of it. And I always end my show with something called a life check. If you guys read my book called Day One, you know that I do a life check, which is where we basically have a section at the end of the chapter where we go in and we make sure that we talk about the things that we discussed, things that we already wrote down. Maybe we just need an opportunity to go in and remind ourselves of some pertinent information for the day. So today's life check, really, really simple. Stop complaining. stop taking life for granted. You use this show, use any platform that you have. Look at how everyone is out here fighting and surviving and doing what these things that, I mean, listening to Christophe's story, like you know, he's sitting here smiling and in such good spirits, and you're complaining about the simplest thing. So always remember that, you know, whatever it is that you're going through, whatever obstacle it is, we're all life survivors. We're all out here fighting. Just try and figure out what you need to do to adjust your mindset so that you become the strongest version of yourself
Yes. Oh, I
inside and
love
out as
that.
we all go
Yes.
beyond the fit.